Head ajakirjanikud.
Dear ladies and gentlemen of the press, welcome Kadriorg. So we have the presidents of Estonia and Israel giving us the joint press conference. So the agenda today is that the heads of state will give us an overview of the meeting they just had and their positions, and then we will take two questions. So Mr. Alar, Karis, please.
Herzog.
Mr. President, dear ladies and gentlemen of the press, I would like to welcome the head of state of Israel, President Isaac Herzog, on his visit to Estonia. So today's meeting is a natural continuation of my February visit, during which I visited both Israel and also the Palestinian territories. Maintaining bilateral communications and honest discussion is especially important when the times are difficult, as we are facing these times both in Europe and in the Middle East. Israel's decision to open an embassy in Tallinn is a clear sign of our strengthening relations. So this will also contribute towards a closer cooperation in the political fields of security and economy. In recent years, Estonian-Israeli defense relations have also gained momentum. So we have the business delegation accompanying President Herzog, and this shows an interest in deepening cooperation. We also discussed very thoroughly the situation in the Middle East. So this conflict cannot continue indefinitely without real solutions. Lasting peace and stability require determined work from all the parties and also willingness to contribute to peace and reconciliation. Estonia has always supported and will support in the future the two-state solution in the Middle East. As Estonians, we do know that if a nation wants to have an independence, they cannot be denied. But the prerequisite for achieving this is peace. So this means also freeing the hostages and also respect to humanitarian laws. This current catastrophic humanitarian situation in Gaza is deeply worrying. A large proportion of those killed are civilians. The price of fighting terrorism cannot be like this. It's not acceptable. It is important that humanitarian aid would be accessible to all the residents who need it in Palestine, so all the people who need it. And this must be done peacefully, not at the cost of lives of civilians, especially the lives of children. Discussing all this with the President today, I also understood that over last weeks there have been certain changes taking place, and they've been in the positive direction. We also discussed Russia's aggression against Ukraine, and this is a topic for Estonians which directly concerns our security in Europe. In addition to political and economic assistance, Ukraine also needs military support, drones, also air defense equipment that would help to protect the populations and infrastructure. Israel has taken a number of steps to provide assistance, but Ukraine needs more. And this is why I called on Israel to take a more active role in supporting Ukraine by increasing pressure on Russia at the international level. Conflicts in different regions of the world are all interconnected. If we want to resolve these issues, if we want everybody to understand the crisis near us, we also have to understand what is happening elsewhere in the world. When it comes to the resolution of crisis, it means that we have to listen to the partners and we have to have conversations with them. So this understanding was also the spirit of our conversation. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to give to Israeli.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Karis, Alar, my good friend, for the warm welcome in your beautiful country. A few months ago, as you said, I had the honor of hosting you in Jerusalem, our eternal capital. And I remember very well how much it touched my heart that you wore on your suit jacket lapel the yellow pin that reminds us all every day of the Israeli hostages, which are still being held captive by the Hamas terrorist organization with great cruelty in a crime against humanity and an absolute contravention of international law and basic human morality. The Jewish faith reminds us that every soul is a whole world unto itself, and along with you, I wish to call the international community as a whole here that we will not rest and not be silent until all the captives return home, down to the last man and woman. And later on, I shall also comment on their story. And my dear Mr. President, my state visit here is down in part to the great appreciation for the strong friendship between us and the warm ties between our countries, a connection of common values, of an aspiration for a joint future, and also a common history. In this part of our common memory, there are also painful residues from the past. The Holocaust, which is the darkest chapter in human history, did not miss the Baltic states, including Estonia. The Estonian poet of Jewish extract, Jan Kaplinski, wrote the following words in this regard, these impressive words, and I'm going to quote from him. "My aunt knew them well. I know only their names and what other people have told me. Tinkers, haberdashers, attorneys, doctors, Kogen, Michelson, Iskovich, Golkovich, where are they now? Some of them were lucky enough to be buried in this cemetery under a slab with human Hebrew lettering, but those that my aunt met on the streets of German-occupied Tartu with a yellow star sewn to their clothes, they aren't here, but they're spread between nameless graves, ditches and pits in many places, many countries, homeless in death as in life." And thus, my dear President, in my visit here, we also remember the history of Estonia's Jewish community, a history of creativity, culture and contribution, which was cruelly curtailed in the Holocaust, but remains alive in our memories. From the responsibility of memory, we also have a common duty, fighting every manifestation of anti-Semitism, standing on the side of Jewish life in Europe, including the impressive Jewish community here in Estonia, which I'll be meeting, and to bolster the most basic human value of dignity for all persons. I thank you and welcome the commitment of Estonia's leadership in the fight against anti-Semitism, and for establishing a special Estonian work group that pursues this subject. I wish to say, Mr. President, Israel and Europe, including, of course, Israel and Estonia, are natural partners and have been for decades in so many fields. We're talking about relations that should not only be maintained but also deepened. And the impressive senior economic delegation that has joined me for my visit here proves how much Israel is interested and wants to stand behind this statement. Mr. President, my friend, it is no secret that the State of Israel always seeks and acts towards peace, and we're committed to achieve a peace with our Palestinian neighbors too, and we talked about this quite a lot, about the need to reach peace between the peoples. But it's no secret that terrorism was and still is the greatest obstacle on the way to peace. The shocking massacre that the Hamas terrorist organization committed on 7th of October 2023 echoed for many members of our people the attempt to exterminate us in the past. The State of Israel has been fighting for nearly 2 decades in order to return the Israeli hostages home and to restore security to all of Israel's citizens. We really feel pain over any harm to innocent people. We invest huge efforts according to international law and making great efforts in the humanitarian issue. The accusations untenable and false against Israel in this regard usually while totally disregarding the obvious responsibility of the Hamas for the suffering of Gaza's residents, gravely hurt the reality and our ability to change the reality. Here's an example. In the last week, Israel has been pushing and enabling, with a traumatic change, of bringing in 30,000 tons of humanitarian equipment and food into Gaza. In the last 24 hours, beyond the 300 trucks, which is far beyond the minimum, Israel has been facilitating airdrops of more than 120 shipments that have reached 30 tons from various countries in Europe and in the world. And I wish to invite the Baltic states and Estonia to join this move. But in order to change the reality, we need to reach an agreement and a ceasefire. And our hostages, already for 670 days, they've been rotting in the tunnels in Gaza. This is Eviatar David. His video here, this house was uploaded 3 days ago by the Hamas from the tunnel in Gaza. You could just see skin and bones while the fat, thick-fleshed arm of the captor is holding him, whereas Aviatar is in a danger to his life. And the same is for Ron Breslavsky, whose video was also posted by Hamas, who's also in mortal danger, along with all the other hostages. I think that the world needs to stand the Hamas in its place and to say that if you want something, first of all, you have to free the hostages immediately. They're in mortal, terrible danger. Dear Mr. President, my dear friend, this vicious campaign reminds us also of the alliances of the current global order. There's a prospering alliance of advanced liberty and democracy versus the axis of evil, of hatred, of oppression that the Hamas is part of, and its leadership is based in Tehran. Israel and Estonia are examples of countries where freedom and progress are their compass, their moral compass. And you, Mr. President, by yourself, are a scientist and a professor. You devoted your life to scientific research. You represent the aspiration for humanity. Less than 2 months ago, the Iranians bombed deliberately and publicly one of the key buildings of the Weizmann Institute of Science. And by doing so, the Central Cancer Research Institute was severely damaged. They burned clinical samples, which are irreplaceable. Precious equipment was destroyed, and results of dozens of years of research were erased. And I'm saying explicitly, the Ayatollah regime in Iran is not just a threat to Israel, it's a threat to the whole world. It's a threat to Europe, as you know, Mr. President, that Iranians' weapons damage is lethal and dangerous, and against murderous regimes and terrorist organizations, we must stand and be determined. In this context, the strong warning of the Iranian leadership against the threats to the stability of the world echoes deeply in our hearts. Currently, Estonia, like the other Baltic states, has been proving its exceptional commitment, like other Europeans, towards Ukraine, and so does Israel. Israel's position is clear. Israel is proud of its support for the territorial integrity of Ukraine and is operating in many ways to assist it and the Ukrainian people in many senses, diverse senses, and humanitarian and other actions. In this context, Mr. President, I am happy that the Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar was here, and afterwards he visited Kiev, and I'm happy for his notice that Israel will be opening an embassy in Tallinn. This is a historical step which will bring our peoples and countries closer to each other, and I am proud for this opportunity that we'll be able to see an embassy here in Tallinn. The Estonian nation has always preserved its unique voice, its strong, bold voice. It has done so through various means, and now it's going to do it through innovation and progress. And I'm convinced that the cooperation efforts between our countries will contribute to Estonia, to Israel, to Europe, and to the whole world. So to conclude, Mr. President, thank you very much for the warm welcome and the friendship. Thank you for visiting Israel and for hosting me here too. And I'm sure that the partnership that we are now building will continue to step forward, will strengthen the bridge between our peoples. Sultana, Herr President. Thank you, Mr. President.
And Herzog. Now we can take 2 questions in English. Yeah, please.
Arni Alandi, Estonian Public Broadcasting Corporation, and my question goes to the President of the State of Israel, but I'm also very happy if Estonian President also will comment on that. So the question is, European countries, one by one, are giving indications or promises that they will recognize the statehood of Palestine. Will it have some influence also for relations between Israel and Europe as a whole? And also, is this some kind of influences for relations between Israel and Estonia? Thank you.
I will say that we are in the middle of a major crisis in the Middle East, which has many facets to it. But first and foremost, October 7th was a major watershed in the history of the region and has brought back a major setback in the thought of Israelis as to the possibility of the two-state solution. Because you can have agreements on an internationally recognized boundary, and one day a terror organization sweeps through, butchers, rapes, burns, and takes hostages. And the world doesn't really do much. It condemns, it supports, but when we want to defend ourselves, and you have to fight in the tunnels, and you have to fight in very complicated terrain, you immediately face all sorts of hypocritical approaches. Therefore, in order to move towards a two-state solution or discuss what is the solution, you have to have people-to-people dialogue, you have to deal with the security elements and trust, and you have to be pragmatic as to what you suggest. The whole idea of a two-state solution right now is futile, it will be adverse to the whole notion of peace, will not help one Palestinian, will make people more frustrated, will be viewed as a price to terror, and I welcome the pragmatic approach of the Estonian leadership in this respect. And let me just add just a few words on the humanitarian situation also in English, because this is vital. I mentioned in my speech the situation of the hostages. Okay, Evyatar David, a young kid who was in the party, in the Nova Festival. And he is now bones and skin, that's all. And he has a huge life threat to him. And you see the fat, juicy hand of his captor. And they have food there. It's not that they don't. In the other room, it's full of food, because the hostages who came out of this tunnel told us. And this is Rom Breslavsky, another hostage that they wired his video a few days ago, and so are all the other hostages. They're in life risk situation. And therefore, in order to resolve the situation, we tell the world, you want to move forward? Get a hostage deal, get a ceasefire. In the last 2 weeks, Israel has overhauled the entire approach to the humanitarian situation, thereby pulling and pushing in major quantities of humanitarian aid. 30,000 tons in the last week. 30 tons only by airdrops yesterday, let alone trucks, hundreds of trucks. The UN is holding hundreds of trucks, almost 800 trucks the UN can distribute and is failing to distribute. So there can be a lot of efforts. But instead of that, we see a PR campaign like this one. This is from yesterday by German media. You see a photographer staging Gaza people to show that they are lacking food, whilst there's food there behind them. But this is a staging effort. So we don't shy away from the humanitarian need to help the people of Gaza. But we ask the world not to fall into the lies, condemn Hamas, and say to Hamas, you want to move on? Get the hostages out. Thank you.
Just a brief comment from my side as well. So, yes, the Estonian official position is that we are looking for, waiting for, and working for a two-state solution. But obviously, we understand it doesn't happen overnight. There are certain preconditions. First of all, it's a ceasefire, and hostages as well, and these humanitarian discussions we had already today. So basically what I have been to Israel and Palestine a couple of times, not only as president, but also in past. And I have talked to both sides, people, just ordinary people on the streets. What they do want, they just want to have education, they to have health, they to have healthcare and so forth. They want to have a normal life. They don't speak about statehood. So this is something we should start with, to have peace, and then start thinking what the solution would be.
Thank you. Please.
And another question, it goes to Estonian President, but I again will be very happy when President of Israel will also comment on that. So Estonian people, I know, they are very closely followed all this media coverage from CNN, from BBC, from Deutsche Welle, and so on, also in social media, about this miserable humanitarian situation in Gaza and all these atrocities. What do you say for those people who are watching that and who are making their own conclusion about that and have empathy toward that?
I mean, you described it already. So, but I have been there. I have seen it. I have been to kibbutz in Israel. I have seen a women waiting every Wednesday, going to drink a beer, just waiting with his grandfather to come back. And I said, when I go back to Estonia, and when your grandfather, as a hostage, goes back to Israel, come back to Israel, I open a beer as well. But when I came back to Estonia, I got a message that his grandfather was killed already. So I didn't open the beer. I have seen what is also in Ukraine. So it's not only TV, it's more disturbing when you actually see it. And of course, information, what you get from media, you have to always check whether it's right or not. And but every time I watch TV, it's also disturbing for me. So that's why we should work together to end this war in Israel, and in Palestine, in Ukraine, and in a number of other places in the world. There are more than 50 conflicts in the world, and which are more distant than Ukraine and Israel. But we are all influenced of these conflicts, which are also far away from our countries.
It's also part of a jihadist war launched against Israel as the frontier of Europe. And this jihadist war is using psychological tactics in order to split between Israel and its allies, Israel and the West, in order to divide Israeli society. And I say, we don't shy away from the humanitarian tragedy. But first and foremost, Hamas has stopped every proposal for a compromise. In the last 3 months, Israel agreed to every compromise proposed by the mediators, and Hamas refused. So at the end, what do? You need to bring your hostages back, and you need to change the reality so that war doesn't go on. This is exactly the dilemma we're at, and I explained the issue of the humanitarian situation, which I think is changing dramatically. Thank you very much.
And of course, always what helps is to open up. Let's say, you talk about Gaza, to open up for media, to open up for observers and so forth, that we get truth from Gaza and from other places of conflicts in the world.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your questions and answers. Thank you for joining us. Have a nice day.